Hello, world. Whether you're building in Salesforce or just product in general, to do a great job, it all boils down to communication. And that's what we talk about today with Dee Knell, a Salesforce developer at Tricordia. So I'm going to go ahead and let Dee take it away. Dee, thank you so much for coming on with us. I wanted to start with kind of a fun question here, but when did you realize that technology was going to be important for your career?
Huh. um, Important to my career was probably when I didn't even work in technology. It was probably when I worked for the court system. So that was definitely like the time period of, oh, I need to start learning a little more than what I already know.
hmm Was there like a specific moment where you were like, I feel like I don't know anything and I need to like upskill and like learn this stuff, or was it just like everything is telling me I need to go down this way?
It was honestly more when and we can totally get into my background, but when I was working in the court, it was like late 2000s. How do you say that when it's like just the beginning of the 2000s? Like the late 2000 I can't era, but we didn't have any type of like electronic filing system,
Oh wow.
and it was all paper in my realm, and so I started making my own like filing system, and that's when I was like, okay, I need to kind of learn more or make something better or like tap into the resources that we have.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like some of my earliest memories were like things were broken, like kind of coming from like a non-tech background, and it was like I have to fix them.
Yeah.
There's no one else who's going to do this, right? I think that segues nicely. Can we hear kind of maybe your career story so far, or the highlight reel?
Yeah, I grew up in Connecticut, and we were like a not low income or anything like that, but just like kind of like normal family living in the suburbs in Connecticut. And I remember when we got our first like IBM amazing computer, played Oregon Trail and um, King's Quest. That was like my jam that I loved back then. Um, and my dad was kind of really into like getting the computer and like getting us to like start typing all of our reports on the computer and
Mhm.
getting those papers that print off with like the long one connected sheet and you had to rip off the dots on the side. Like still have like super visceral memories of doing that. But we kind of were a family that was into technology as much as we could be, like video games and Nintendo, and we even had like old school Atari and everything like that. So we definitely stayed in with that. But growing up in Connecticut, I just really wanted to leave, and so I ended up moving out to Utah and went to it was UVU at the time, or UVSC at the time. Now it's UVU, but I ended up getting a degree in behavioral science with an emphasis in psychology, nothing to do with technology. Um, and when I was in college, I worked for a bankruptcy law firm. That was probably honestly one of my bigger first introductions into technology inside of a workspace because we used this program called Time Matters. And it was basically to track our time as office staff. And I was a paralegal. And so it would kind of track my time on cases, but we were able to almost make the software a little more of what we needed it to be with like holding different data points for clients and things like that. But from there, I graduated with that degree in behavioral science, and I really liked the world of law at the time. So I went from working in bankruptcy to working for Utah Legal Services, which was it's a legal organization for victims of domestic violence or landlord tenant law. It had like an income threshold on it, and so we would help a lot of different like lower income women mostly. We did definitely get men clients, but mostly women that were victims of domestic violence and help them with protective orders and um, divorce, custody cases, things like that. Um, I really liked that job. That was a great job. And it kind of like introduced me into the realm of the court system, which then pushed me into being a court clerk. And I got to work with a judge on felony cases and in court. It was honestly probably one of the most exciting exciting jobs ever to like literally hear everybody's story from
Right.
like the entire county, and like everybody that was in court. Just it was like a true crime podcast over and over again, which I
Mhm.
love. But it was a great, that was actually a great job because I then got to see the way the entire court system worked from anything criminal to civil to all these different realms. And I actually became part of the court system when we started actually using technology in the courtroom, which was really cool because it all used to be just paper. Like the clerks would sit there and fill out things manually. But I remember when we got our first computer in the courtroom, and it took definitely a learning curve for like the judge, for the clerk to like figure out how to do things. And it was when we started recording digitally the court hearings, because we weren't doing that beforehand. So but that was a great position to be in. But I really wanted to use my degree a little bit more. So I moved within the court system to what's called the guardian ad litem's office. It's the attorneys that represent abused and neglected kids through their court proceedings. And I ran a program for them called the Court Appointed Special Advocate. And so CASA is the acronym for it. And it was the most intense job I've probably ever had. I managed over 100 volunteers, so managing over 100 people that aren't getting paid is pretty rough. But that's kind of where that experience I talked about of not having like an electronic filing system came into place. I had 100 volunteers and I had 100 folders of like just paper, and I could not handle that. And so I kind of just started to make my own filing system within like Microsoft Word. And so started to kind of like keep notes that way and track things along those ways. And then the court at that same time started making their own internal software. Can't even tell you the name of it now. I think they called it Care, but it was kind of what I was doing in a better way, like an actual software instead of
Mhm.
me making up my own thing that way. But I had our first child, and I worked for a little over a year before I decided to um, think about having the second one, and realizing that daycare was going to be way more expensive with two kids than just one. And so I actually ended up leaving that job to start to stay home. But I truthfully really like working. I feel a sense of accomplishment with it. And so I went in a totally different direction and started um, writing articles for an SEO company just on my own time, and had to kind of do some more research into like SEO and how it was working and what I needed to do to like hit those searches on the internet and things like that. I did that for a while until we have four kids, until our youngest, she entered preschool. Um, and my husband Josh was like, well, what are you going to do? Now you're going to get time back. And I was like, I want to go back to work. And he was very much like, no, no, you can take the time off now. You don't have to worry about taking care of kids all the time. And I was like, nope, I really want to go back. And in my brain, I was like, I don't want to go back to the court because I definitely, having four kids and then working in that realm, I didn't think I could emotionally handle that again.
Mhm.
And then I was trying to figure out what to do. So I decided, before I decided to go back to work, it was during COVID, I decided I'm going to be a flower farmer. So I would started our whole backyard, like half of our yard, I turned into an entire flower farm, and started growing tons of flowers. And I had like a subscription service and these people that would sign up, but I knew I wasn't charging enough and I didn't want to charge more. And so I never really made any money doing that. And so in my brain, when I was like, I'll go back to work, I was like, I'll just work at a local nursery selling flowers. It sounds wonderful. It still sounds wonderful. But and I told Josh, my husband, that, and he was like, I don't know if that you should do that one. You should look into something else. So he got me onto Code Academy. It was like, we're going to teach you HTML and CSS. And so
Mhm.
I learned HTML and CSS, and then he had a couple of like side contracts, so he would have me like help him with that. And I did not like that. It was not my that was not my realm.
Mhm.
And I did like creating. I think that that is the thing that got me feeling like, oh, okay, I can work in this realm, but I don't like this language.
Mhm.
And I I had never worked in a job before where I had a project that I could see. And besides like writing articles, but even then, I wrote them in a way to hit that SEO. So it was never the way I would actually write anything. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, this was my first time where I could code a back end or the front end of a website and then see it. And so I was like, oh, I like that. That's actually kind of cool. And he worked with, I believe this is how this all came about because I'm actually not sure. But he worked with a woman that she was a Salesforce architect,
Mhm.
and she helped put together the Salesforce software for a company at the time that was called Lambda School. And Lambda School rebranded to Bloom Tech, and then I was looking to start something. I didn't know what it was, and he brought up Salesforce to me, and he was like, "You should look into it." So I just went on YouTube and watched like a "What is Salesforce" video, and I I have this mindset in me where I really like things organized and I like them to flow in a certain way.
Mhm.
And watching that video made me go, oh, wow, I could actually really get into this. Like, I like the way that the process works when you work inside of Salesforce. And I also like that you can customize it. So I went on Udemy and I found some courses, and I literally just 1 month, I took like three Salesforce courses like nonstop every day for like 5 hours a day. I would watch this course, and it was by this British man named Francis Pindar. And um, my husband would hear just like a British man talking all the time in the other room because that's like what I did for like a month, like just
Mhm.
listen to that nonstop. So I didn't teach myself, but I definitely just went straight into it, and I didn't know what at that point like what I should do. So I on LinkedIn kind of rebranded myself to be a Salesforce admin, like starting
Mhm.
out. And out of nowhere, this guy that I didn't know just reached out to me through LinkedIn and asked me if I would be open and willing to help him on a few different projects that he had. And I had no idea what I was doing. So I was like, yes, but I have no idea what I'm doing. And so if you will bear with me and let me learn while I help you, then yes, I would love to do it. And
Mhm.
he was totally willing. He was like, I need the help and you need to learn. So let's do it. And that was probably one of the scariest things for me, but also it was very cool. So he was a consultant on all these different solar companies. And
Mhm.
so I got to see all these different orgs, which is kind of they call it inside of Salesforce. So different companies and the way they were using the software,
Mhm. Mhm.
and just practice with some basic admin stuff of like bulk uploading and creating fields and simple flows. But there was this one task that he asked me to do that was like, when this field on in Salesforce changes, update this field. And I was like, I have no idea how to do that. Now I'm like, I can't believe that that was like how easy of a thing it was. But then I was like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to do this? But that little contract, taking a chance, is honestly what launched me just like straight into my career. Um, Josh was still at Bloom Tech at the time, and they needed help. They needed an admin, and he was like, "Hey, I spoke to HR. You'd be on a completely separate team. If you want, you can apply." And I said no. Like, I'm not ready for that. I'm There's no way it's going to happen. And he was like, no, I think you should apply. So I applied with the caveat that nobody would know that I was his wife. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I want it to be on mine. I don't want anybody to know that you and I are married. And I remember interviewing for that position, and some of the questions they asked me, I was like, I have no idea, but I will go and learn that one. So
Mhm.
I just kept saying that over and over again, but they took a chance on me and they hired me, and I actually ended up on an all female Salesforce team, which now I'm finding is like pretty interesting to like that was one of my first like full-time experiences. um, I worked with some really great women at that job that really took the time to make sure that I understood what I was looking at, what I was working on, what I was building. Um, and that was a really awesome opportunity for me at the beginning. It was great at the beginning. We were an established company. We were building some awesome things. And then that company started to downsize and it became harder and harder. But then the team became smaller and smaller until it ended up being just me on the entire Salesforce team. And I had no um, way around being the admin, the architect, the developer. So I had to learn everything that was going on. But it I actually really love Salesforce. I know that sounds so dumb, and every time I say it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's dumb. But I actually really do love it because of I have this thing in my brain where I can see holes in like sales processes, and it's really cool to be like, I see this hole, and I can suggest ways to fix it. And that's been kind of one of the coolest pieces for me of like being able to see that puzzle. So yeah, so I was still at Bloom Tech, and I knew that we were downsizing. It was hard to be alone, like not to have anybody to bounce ideas off of.
Mhm.
And I actually had a recruiter reach out to me and tell me about a position for a company at the time that was called PCF Insurance. And I said no. And I was like, great, that's great of you. Thanks. No. And he reached out to me again and was like, just take a moment and talk to me. I would love to talk to you. And they were actually located in the town next to where I live. Bloomtech was remote. And so I hadn't actually worked inside of an office yet with Salesforce at all. And so I told them, okay, fine, I'll talk to you. And so I spoke to him, learned more about the company. Was actually really impressed by the company and kind of like where they had been, where they were planning to go. And he invited me into the office to meet with who would end up being my manager. And it was a great I had a great like feeling about working for that company. And so yeah, I put my notice in at Bloomtech and left there and went over to this company, which is now called Tricordia, and it's an insurance brokerage firm. It is a multi-billion-dollar company. It's kind of insane, but the Salesforce realm and even the technology side of it is almost startup within a billion-dollar company. So it's such a different mindset because they want things super fast right now. And we are a very small team at Trucordia, but it's like a startup with like a $1 billion company. So it's just like a different kind of mindset. And anything we come up with, like everyone's like grateful for because it's all new to them and it's not really in a maintenance mode. It's very much in a build mode. And it's
Mm.
exciting. I actually really think it's fun
Mhm.
because when you're like building the product and it's all new, everybody's like, yeah, go with that. So they listen to your ideas more. So I actually really, really enjoy where I'm at right now in fast paced, nonstop, but it's really fun. So yeah, that's
Amazing.
like background.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. That was I got goosebumps like halfway through. It was great. Um, I loved what you were saying though, where like as you became comfortable with Salesforce, you could see the holes, right? Like you could see like I call it like seeing the matrix, right? Like you can see all the zeros and ones all around, and like it always fascinates me where like you get a little bit of experience, you get a little bit of technical literacy, and you get that exposure, and then it's like wow, look at all this opportunity like right in front of you. Is is that something that you've continued to develop over time here, and like now you can see even bigger holes and more opportunities?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because part of being so I'm now can my title is Salesforce developer, but being an admin on that side of things, you build a lot of reports for a
Mhm.
lot of the different teams in Salesforce. And so building those reports, like I'm asked to gather certain types of data, but while I'm gathering the data, I can start to see like the other data that's kind of like sitting there, not moving. And
Mhm.
so it's very like, it just is eye opening when you're like, hey, you asked me to go get this, but I actually want to show you this like group of leads that nobody's touching that I found. And I think I know how we can move these and put them through marketing and things like that. And honestly, like learning, the more I learn about tools that integrate the right way with Salesforce, I'm like, okay, if we could use this tool to be able to push this type of communication, we might be able to hit some different lead scores and like get them assigned out to people and
Mhm.
things like that. So honestly, it's like almost like the more I learn, the more I'm like see more holes in how to
Mhm.
fix them. So
Yeah. Oh, I
yeah.
love that. My experience with Salesforce has been really focused on like building internal tools. Like it's very
Mhm.
much like for the company. Is that fair? Like, or do you find yourself building a lot of customer facing stuff as well?
It's really funny because I feel like it anytime our team is asked like, "Oh, we wish we could do this." It's like, "Well, you can. You can like literally use it for almost anything." Like it
Mhm.
which is kind of a crazy concept that I don't think everybody quite understands. But yeah, so at this company in particular, we so we're a brokerage, so we purchase insurance companies. So we have acquired like almost like 320 different insurance companies around the country. And we're
Mhm.
actually only internal facing right now, but we're actually going to start turning it outward and make it more external. Just with some of our, like, just for instance, we offer like benefit insurance. So
Mhm.
some of our clients are companies that are giving their employees benefits, and so we want to create like a portal for those companies when they have questions about their benefits that can come in and use some of our tools, which Salesforce has Agentforce, and so like using some of the AI tools to get some questions about like benefits and things like that. So right now it's pretty internal, but it is starting to turn like external as well. So,
Mhm.
which is fun because at Bloom Tech it was pretty external, but
Mhm.
at the same time helping the internal folks like sell. And I mean, that's what Salesforce is. It's supposed to be a tool for sales, but you can use it across like all realms. So, like it could do a ton of things. It's kind of crazy,
Mhm.
but it's also really fun.
Mhm. Nice. I feel like I was like dip into Salesforce a little bit, and then it's like I get pulled into other things, and I really need to spend like a good project on it and really get my head into it. I know it takes a team to build any kind of product these days. How do you find yourself collaborating with other product disciplines?
Um, like other product like that we integrate within
Oh,
or
that's a good angle. Like so that or like design or product management or kind of those other related product disciplines that are around engineering and development, but not actively doing it.
yeah, we so like the company I'm at right now in particular, like they are a very heavy like Microsoft shop. So we use Power BI
Mhm.
for a lot of our dashboards for the executive team. And so I work really closely with our data team, which the data team at this company is larger than the engineering team. So that I mean that's hard like to to be in that position, but it's really great because we make sure our data is aligned, which I think a lot of people find that that's one of the biggest issues is like Salesforce isn't matching up to our data pool. And so
Mhm.
working with them is great because we want to have open communication. I think that's been the biggest thing for me in working in technology is they're definitely the side where people are, here's my code. I'm a code monkey. I will code and do my project and be done. I cannot think that way. So I like literally have to be like, well, if I do that, then this is going to happen. And then this thing's going to happen. And so I need to talk to the data team to make sure that I have the right things that are going to be pushed into their dashboards and they have the right things coming back to me. I have that happen quite a bit. And then in this company in particular, we actually also work with a software that's called AMS. It's Agent Management Service, I think is what it is. It's like a insurance agent management team.
Mhm.
So we have a bidirectional sync with them, and so that's honestly a big thing too. I sometimes that team will make tweaks to their software without telling us, and
Mhm.
we then will end up with like broken syncs without knowing it, and we'll just get a bunch of cases in from our agents that are selling that are like, hey, my stuff is not pushing over. And so communication for me is like the biggest. Over communicate better than under is kind of like the way it needs to go, or else you end up spending all your time fixing everything and lots of bugs. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's so frustrating. Where it's like it was working yesterday, it was fine, and now today it's a mess.
And you're like, what
Um,
happened? What happened?
Totally. With I think you were kind of touching on it there, and I want to dig in a little more. How do you make like internal tooling feel like a team sport instead of like a service ticket or something like that, and get maybe the broader organization invested in the success of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, when I started at this company, I think they had been using Salesforce for about a year. And so everything was new all the time. And we were pushing like updates on the user all the time. And this is nothing against the team that was there, but I do think that just in general, sometimes we forget about the end user. We're like, we finished my project, push it. And it's like, wait. Like the end user is going to have no idea what is happening if we push this right now. So when I was at that company, I still am at that company. When I was at the beginning, I was like, hey, I can see a lot of like tickets and cases coming in where people are asking like, hey, this changed. Why did it change? How do I use it? And so I suggested a like, let's start doing like a monthly workshop and meeting with like letting them come in and we can announce our releases because there are so many because we're just growing so quickly. And so luckily our training team really like that, and so we actually do a monthly workshop now. I don't run it anymore. I did at the beginning. I am not a trainer, which I learned very quickly. I try really hard, but I'm not my realm. And but we have an amazing trainer right now, named Leanne. She's amazing. She was actually at Bloom Tech, so I stole her. Not stole her. I didn't steal her. I just was like, come be with me. You're so good. So yeah, she is amazing. And every month we try to make sure the end user is very aware of that internal tool, how it's being updated, and how it's going to help them in their process. I think the same thing of communication, especially with the end user and keeping them in mind. And even as you build, like when I get requirements for a build, I always will look at it like, okay, but if I am using the tool, I'm never going to do that. Like, I'm never going to push that button unless it's required of me. So, just always keeping that end user in mind, especially for myself, is kind of how I can ensure that internally I am making the right choices on my builds. So,
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it's funny you bring that up because when we talk to engineers, we hear all the time that they're brought into the conversation too late,
yeah.
and like the requirements are fixed, you got to build it now, right? How have you kind of dealt with that challenge of being involved in sort of like the planning process, but saving time to actually get stuff done as well?
Yeah, I have a great product manager that I work with right now. His name is Zach. He is really good about talking to me about the request of the build first, me asking him a bunch of questions like, okay, how is this going to work? And like, what about this piece that they're not thinking about? And then he will go back to the stakeholders and kind of gather those requirements. I do know this about myself that I tend to be too helpful. Like I don't know how to say no. And so I
Mhm.
have my direct manager, his name is Chris. He is awesome, but he has to keep me kind of in check of like, hey, stop saying yes. Like you're causing more work. And I'm like, okay, you're right. Like, and so I definitely have to follow the process of making sure that my product manager knows what I need. And also just being able to say like, yes, I want to help you, but let me actually send you over to Zach or Chris, and not me agreeing to like help people. I think that's actually a big thing. But I will say that I have definitely worked with product managers that don't know Salesforce, and that's actually really hard to like get a ticket and go into my work and read the requirements and be like, well, this doesn't even make sense with what we already have in place. Like,
Hmm.
because not knowing the software and trying to work in it is very hard. Like that's especially Salesforce. It's so vast. I don't think people actually understand how much it can do and how big it is and how connected it is. And so having my product manager Zach right now understand the software is like amazing. Like it's that is so helpful. So
Hmm. Yeah, that we see that all the time, just on our end as a web shop, where like we have a non-technical PM who's translating everything into something that's supposed to be technical,
yeah.
and sometimes they're great, sometimes they miss the mark. Do you have any like specific tactics or like communication patterns that you like to adhere to kind of extract what you need out of them, or like how do you kind of manage that relationship?
Yeah. I think the best way for me to build for somebody is to see how they work. And so a lot of times what happens for me is I'll get a story, and if I don't 100% have a grasp on how they're working, I actually will reach out to one of the end users, and not always like the manager or anything, but the actual person doing the work, and be like, "Can I just meet with you for an hour so I can watch how you work?" And because it helps me then to see like, okay, I saw you click this way like 5 times. Like I can actually fix that for you so you only have to do it once. And but I won't get that if I just am looking at like my Jira ticket and I'm like, well, how did they get from here to here? Like how what do I have to take out? So for me, actually meeting with the end user, um, seeing how they work to see if I can even come up with automations that maybe weren't even in my requirements, but it will actually add to that build, is really helpful. I ask a lot of questions. I think when I'm inside of Bloom Tech, when I first started, my first manager, one of the best pieces of advice she ever gave me was do not start building unless you have a question. Like, don't build until you ask at least one question. And so I do that now. I don't start building right away until I look at it and ask a question. And so I think, again, that like being overly communicative with the teams and the users and everything is like always best.
Absolutely. That's such a wonderful mindset, and it's one that we don't see all that often, especially with engineers and technical talent. Do you have like advice for like cultivating that, or like how someone can, maybe they're early in their career, how do they like become comfortable kind of getting outside the engineering bubble?
Yeah, I think that even for me, like starting at this company, I actually asked to be a part of their like trainings that they were doing so that I could literally put myself like into the shoes of the user. And so like being new is having to be totally vulnerable, like learning as much as you possibly can and being okay with like making mistakes. And, like I think that's always a hard thing, even I mean for any engineer to like be like, oh my gosh, that was such a dumb mistake. But owning up to the mistakes is how you learn from them. So it's the only way that you're going to get better and progress moving forward. I think also for me, I know what it's like to feel almost like you feel dumb when you're trying to figure something out. And so when I go to a lot of our new user trainings to help our trainer answer questions that they might have, and addressing the question of like, that's a great question. I do that quite a bit because I'm always like, if you are asking that question, I guarantee someone else in this room right now is thinking the same thing and they don't want to ask it. And so um, they always bring me in because I always am like, that's a great question. Like, so, and try to like help people understand. I also I worked in customer service for a long time, like doing restaurants and like clothing, and like kindness always wins. So being nice to these people, because it is hard to learn a new software, especially when you're not used to learning new softwares. Like we have end users all from every age range, every like geographic area of the country, and it's hard to tell them, hey, you've been working this one way for 20 years, you're not going to do that anymore, you're actually going to work this way. And it's like the craziest trying to help them get it in place. Like I have to even sometimes help people understand how to bookmark things that I mean, totally not even Salesforce related at all. But yeah, just like going from the beginning with like open mindset, being kind, like understanding that this is hard for other people, I think is always like the best way to approach things.
Yeah, no, that resonates so much with my experience as well. So I think change management is like criminally underrated. I
Yes.
think for every organization that I've almost worked with, and I can just remember we did a very early in my career. We had a ticketing system for engineering basically, but it was a big international org, and we changed it on people. And we didn't really roll it out great. We kind of just said, "Hey, it's different," and the chaos that ensued after that was unbelievable. And that was a big learning experience for me how not to do it. Do you? How do you like approach those big changes where you're like, I know this is going to affect a lot of people. What is my rollout strategy going to look like, and how do you sort of manage all that chaos that's going to happen?
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. Communication again. We have an awesome marketing team that really, when we know about to do something big, um, we will actually contact our marketing team and tell them like, hey, we have this big rollout. We need help kind of announcing it.
Mm.
And then, inside of Salesforce, you can do, different, um, we'll call them automations that will like pop up right when you log on. And so we always do like an alert screen. You know, people always click past these things like all the time. So we don't just do it there. We do an alert screen, and then in Salesforce you have a home screen, so we put it on the home screen. And then if we set up like the how-to guide that you can click through, we do that. We have our training team make an actual how-to guide and put it on our website. Like we try so hard to like over communicate when we know there's a big release coming up. We actually started with those workshops that I mentioned that we started doing. We really started to try to time our big releases with those workshops. And so we would send out announcements. Our marketing team would help us send out announcements for the workshop. And then in there, put new release coming soon. And then train on that new release and not release it till like the next day. And so that way we could try to get as many people as possible to see it before we push it. But even then, you definitely get tons and tons of tickets that come in of like, this is broken, this isn't working, that kind of thing. And so we have started to, when we know that we're rolling something out, kind of like prepping ourselves of like, we're going to get tickets, we're going to get questions. And I will get like direct questions, and I have to always reroute people to our help desk because then I end up answering like 5,000 questions in a day. And so, yeah, just kind of making sure that they feel supported, that we have that how to guide in place. And so when we start getting questions, we can be like, this is about that release we mentioned in the workshop. Here's the guide that we mentioned for that release. And so just being prepared beforehand is a huge deal. So,
Yeah. Avoid the scramble. Just try to have all your ducks in a row and and help people. That's the important thing. With with rolling out these changes, have y'all done something yet where it didn't quite meet the mark? Where you were like, we rolled it out, we thought it was going to have all these benefits, and then you know what? Actually, in practice, it didn't do what we were thinking about. Like, how do y'all manage that situation? And do you have like a rollback plan, or do you kind of power through and iterate on it? Like, what's your approach for that?
yeah, I mean, there's definitely been things that we have pushed thinking like this is going to change everything. And then maybe it didn't like actually have the result that we wanted. We actually don't ever normally roll something back. We
Mhm.
will actually take the build and try to improve it in a different way. And
Mhm.
so, which I actually really like. However, with that being said, there are definitely times where you will spend like an entire sprint building something, and then you'll have those stakeholders be like, actually, we're going to nix that. And you're like, okay, I can't take it personally. Like it's okay. Like it'll live in my sandbox. It was such a good build. Like there's definitely been that's happened, but yeah, like even I no joke, last month we announced in our workshop that we were going to launch something like the next day, but the next day I was like, that's not going to work. It's going to break. And so we haven't even launched it yet, and we announced it last month because we've been trying to fix it. And so um yeah, there's been times where I know we've said things like that last month, and people will be like, hey, remember that thing that you said was going to launch? And we're like, yeah, we know it's coming. And so it's hard to, there's actually only 3 of us on our team right now, and there's 5,000 employees at this company. So it's hard. There's a lot of work that are coming, but then everybody thinks their stuff is more important. So
Mhm.
things get bumped. And so, yeah, just kind of building off of what's there to improve is more our route than rolling it back.
Yeah, absolutely. With that sort of prioritization, that's a huge challenge. Like getting everybody aligned and making sure you're working on the right thing in the right order in the right time. Do you all like what kind of practices do you all apply there?
Yeah, so we don't have a QA team.
Hmm.
So we do all of our own QA. And truthfully, a lot of times I will talk to some of the end users like, hey, you need to be my guinea pig. And so a lot of times, because of how we acquire agencies, sometimes we'll actually pick one of those locations to be like, we have this thing we want to release, but we need a group of people to test it. Would you be willing to help us test? And usually we'll pick like a location that we know has mentioned wanting something along this build before so that we can actually take the people that thought of it or the ones that would benefit the most, have them use it, and then take their feedback and improve it before we release it to everyone else. And I also think that actually helps our users feel like important in the build, like they have a say.
Hmm.
And I personally, I don't like building things that I'm like, who wants this? Like, is it you management or is it the user? Because we should be building for the user, and I can make your management like data come out of what is there. But I like to talk to the end users to make sure, is this beneficial? Are you actually going to use it, or how can I make it better? And so for us, like the QA is, I wish we had QA. Like it would solve so many issues if we had QA. But I do think for a lot of companies, that's almost sometimes like a luxury, like an afterthought of like, yeah, that'd be nice, but we'd rather have more people building than people testing. But it's like, oh, we could get more out if we had testing. So yeah, we QA a lot of our stuff among each other quite a bit.
Hmm.
So
Gotcha. Yeah, it's like you would have more people building because you have less people fixing stuff if you
yeah,
had a QA team, and
I know.
that's a hard thing to sell sometimes, but
Yep.
it's the truth. I think their QA is phenomenal. Um, Goodness, when you're working I know were working in Salesforce. You mentioned Microsoft as well. Do you feel like those ecosystems, like you have to solve things a certain way, or does it give you the flexibility to approach problems from like any angle?
Um, that's a hard one. So Salesforce and Slack are partners. Like
Hmm.
and so we don't use Slack at our company because we have Microsoft Teams. And I'm always like, please, like it would make our lives so much easier to not use Microsoft. They don't talk together very well. I know that there's people that love Microsoft out there that are probably like, oh, you could use Power Automate. And I'm like, yeah, Power Automate. But for us, it's on, I have to sometimes learn different routes to make sure that um, I'm getting those results that those users want. I mean, working at a very large company, like we have security and IT and all these things, so I can't just integrate. Like I have to make sure that what I'm about to integrate is safe, and that I'm okay to like talk to different systems. And so with Microsoft in general, like we don't even have an integration set up right now, and it's out there. We can totally do the Power Automate side, but um, it's one of those like back burner, like if we had time, this would be nice type of
Hmm.
things. But at the same time, I've done all of our integrations with Slack. And so when I was at Bloom Tech, that's how we did it. And it's amazing to talk between those two. Um, Setting those automations up it's a game changer, honestly. So
Hmm.
I know that it'll be in our um, probably in our roadmap at some point to get the automation set up and start sending like team announcements when someone hits a big deal or things along those lines, which would be really nice. But for right now, it's definitely a workaround. Definitely kind of have to remember that we have Teams or Microsoft and all those. But yeah, it's a hard one.
Mhm. Gotcha. I think AI is sort of the hot button topic for everybody these days. I know Salesforce has done a lot with. I think Agentforce is the umbrella. Have you all started working with it at all, and what's your experience been so far?
We have a few things in place when it comes to Salesforce's AI. We actually are in the process of turning on part of um, the service side of one of our builds, which will actually turn on our ability to use Agentforce. So we actually have plans to put it in place. I've played with it in the sandbox and to get ready for it, and it's pretty easy on our build side. I don't think it'll actually be too hard of a thing there at all. I do think that sometimes we will build automations where people are like, "Is that AI?" And it's like, well, I guess it's kind of like AI. So we could just even say yes because I'm like searching through a document for certain things. So, but yeah, I mean, for me, like right now, when I build, if I get stuck in like my syntax, I will just throw it into chat gpt, like what the heck is happening here, so I don't have to like piece apart my entire like 30 lines of code to figure out like where my parenthesis is. So
Mhm.
that's been like, I love that part of of having to like save time in that way. But yeah, I Salesforce is definitely like, Salesforce the company is pushing AI hard. There is like a realm of like, do they actually understand how they're using this just yet? Like it's still so new, especially for Salesforce, that I'm like waiting to see if they can kind of improve it. We do have this piece in place right now that's, it's called, they call it like activity capturing, where
Mm,
it basically will read your inbox of your email, and
mhm,
if it sees the email address associated with somebody inside of Salesforce, it'll take your email and attach it to that person in Salesforce. The
mhm,
problem is that you end up attaching everything. So if I was talking to you, Nick, and I emailed you like, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend?" It'll attach inside of Salesforce. And so a lot of our users are like, "Why is that in there?" And I
mhm,
can't control it because it's kind
mm,
of just a piece of Salesforce sitting inside the software. So they have this like toggle that you can turn on that's like, if it looks personal, don't attach it. But I'm like, that's not helping like open the back end so I can like actually see what's happening here. But
mhm,
I think it'll improve more. It's new. So, and people are kind of like scared of it. Like, but I'm like, hey, if it makes our jobs easier, then I'm all for being able to learn how to utilize it instead of shunning it, which I'm also like, you can't pretend it's not going to be a thing. Like, this is a thing. So we got to make
mhm.
sure that we're using it. I am
Yeah.
excited though to put Agent Force in place. I think it'll actually be really helpful for a
Mhm.
lot of the users.
Yeah, I absolutely here to stay probably too. So I think yeah, a lot of people are trying the old bury the head in the sand technique, and I don't
Yeah.
think it's going to work very well. But also I've so we've done a couple AI implementations, and I've seen it do magic. Like you're like, wow, I
Oh
can't
yeah.
believe it's doing this. And then the other 90% of the time, though, it's like, that's not quite what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I really, it is a black box. I don't know how to make it better beyond
Mhm.
what we're already doing. Do you, as you think about like your end users, do you think foresee them kind of struggling with that? And like, is there ways to be proactive now that could help address that kind of give and take?
Yeah, I think that if they thought of, I think that people are scared to think it's going to like take over their job. So like the agents that we have that sell insurance, I think are like, AI is going to take over my job and sell insurance. That is so not what we would end up using AI for. For us, it would be more like if they are stuck and don't know how to do something, or if somebody has a question about like a different line of insurance, like we are going to put the AI tooling in place to like search through all of those thousands of pages of documentation to get people like the right answer and get to the right place. I think that everyone thinks the robots are going to take over the world. Maybe that'll happen someday. Who knows? But like, I just think learning the tooling, learning more about AI actually just makes you more useful, and like it'll end up helping your job more than it does scaring people away. So the more that we can show, even on our side, showing them like, hey, if you do this automation, I'll capture things for you more than if you were trying to do it manually, and we'll make sure that it's done correctly. Trying to show them that it's the same concept with AI. If you use the AI, it'll actually capture things for you more and help you do your job better than it would you doing it manually. So it's going to be a learning curve no matter what, but I think if people are open to it, then it'll end up being a good thing rather than a deficit for sure.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I think we're
Yeah.
feeling it all over the place right now, and it's time will tell. But awesome. Hopefully, the optimistic case is, I think, the best one. Well, I think we're coming quite to the end here. Is there something that you want everybody to go check out?
I mean, checking out, if you need insurance, come check out Tricordia. No joke, I actually had no idea about the insurance world before this. I obviously do not sell insurance, but I love the concept of what this company is doing, where it's like, let's like acquire these companies so that we can give people more options, which I was like, oh, that's actually a really awesome use case of being able to do it. Yeah, and then truthfully, I would say that we need more women in tech. So the it's an amazing place to be in. It's like I think that there are definitely things that we as women can see differently than men, and just in general. And so I am the only woman on our engineering team, and I love the guys I work with. I work with great people, and it's a sense of accomplishment that I didn't think I would have. So I would honestly say that to women out there, that don't sell yourself short, like at all. I definitely pigeonholed myself as like, oh, I can't ask for a salary like that, and that's so not true. Like we can do it too, and we can have families and kids and marriages and work in tech and just work as hard as everybody else does. So yeah, I would definitely say to women out there to start looking. And just about every state on LinkedIn has some type of women in tech group out there. And I'm part of one here in Utah. So look those up too. It's great to like bounce things off of different people with like mindsets. So it's awesome.
100%. More women in tech, and check out Truecordia. So, Dee, thank you so much for coming
Yeah.
on. It's been a pleasure. This was super fun.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you so much.